The most rewarding part about flying the A-10 is not when you're flying it, but when you're on the ground talking to somebody that comes up to you and says, "This airplane saved my life in XYZ conflict." To have somebody come up to you and say, "You guys saved our lives when we were pinned down by Taliban or the Revolutionary Guard or anything, anywhere, somewhere in a bad spot when they needed you most." That is the most rewarding part of flying this aircraft, is to hear the stories of the people who you helped at their most greatest time of need.
AOPA keeps flying safe, accessible, and fun by protecting your freedom to fly. We are the most trusted one-stop resource for all things related to general aviation. Become an AOPA pilot today.
I grew up in a small town in northwest Iowa. I started flying when I was in high school. Got my private pilot's license there. I went to school at South Dakota State. Finished the rest of my ratings and instructed there for a little while in Cessna Skyhawks. I got hired at a regional airline and flew there for a couple of years. So I was fully rated air transport pilot flying for the regionals on the East Coast. And then I applied off the street as like an off the street non-traditional or a traditional hire to the Air National Guard. So I filled out a pilot application package, submitted it, got an interview, and then was hired. From there, I did the officer training school, accomplished that, and then went through the flying medical process for the military. And then after that, went to undergraduate pilot training. That was 14 months in Del Rio, Texas, flying the T6, the New Day T6, the two-seat turboprop. Flew that for about 6 months, and then 6 months follow on flying the T-38 fighter lead-in for that. And then after that was the official fighter lead-in course called Introduction to Fighter Fundamentals. That was another 4 to 5 month course at Randolph Air Force Base in Texas. And then after that was 6 months of A-10 specific training, the RTU, the schoolhouse in Tucson, Arizona. After completing that, back here to Martin State, and I flew here at Martin State for 2 years full time. During like a seasoning tour. And then after that, I'm a traditional guardsman again at the airline full time, and then flying the A-10 part time. Slightly more demanding than a traditional part-time job, but it's nonetheless part-time. So on the general aviation side, I've got a 1992 Super Decathlon, so I keep that across the street, the runway here at Martin State. So I've been very fortunate to have just a variety of flying. The military side with the A-10, the civilian side with the Decathlon, and then a little bit of the 121 airline environment flying 737s at United Airlines. Pretty fortunate to dabble in just about all the aspects of aviation.
I got started in aviation. My father was a Marine fighter pilot. So he flew A-4s in the Marines. He went to the Naval Academy. I was fortunate to go to the Air Force Academy, but I will be perfectly honest, I went there to play lacrosse and I got a civil engineering degree out of it. Really had zero flying experience while I was at the Air Force Academy. I left the Air Force Academy and then was fortunate to get a pilot training spot. In between my time at the Air Force Academy and pilot training, I lived in Destin, Florida, and that was really my first exposure to general aviation, where I was fortunate to be able to get my private pilot's license out of that. And then I went to pilot training at Columbus Air Force Base in Mississippi. Probably one of the few guys left, certainly in the Guard maybe, or on active duty, that flew the T-37. So I flew the T-37, the Tweet, in pilot training initially at Columbus. And then I was really blessed to have the opportunity to transition into a fighter bomber track where I flew the T-38C. Out of pilot training, they will keep a few pilots who have just graduated pilot training and keep them at the pilot training bases to be what's called first assignment instructor pilots. It was not my top choice, but looking back on it, it really was a great assignment. So I stayed and taught in the T-38 for a little less than 3 years, and the T-38 was a lot of fun to fly, as well as we had a wide range of students, both U.S. as well as coalition partners that went through Columbus Air Force Base. And then in 2010, I was selected to go to the A-10. So from Columbus Air Force Base, I went to the A-10 for our initial training. Spent about 9 months at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, learning to fly the A-10, the basics of aircraft handling, surface attack, aerial combat maneuvering, into close air support. And then you graduate from there and as a mission qualified wingman, and went to Moody Air Force Base in Georgia. So I was in the 74th Fighter Squadron on active duty, deployed right away out of there to Afghanistan. So I'd only been in the unit in the 74th for about 2 months. So we went to Kandahar Air Force Base, in 2011, and that was my first combat deployment. And then in 2013, again with the 74th Fighter Squadron, deployed to Bagram for my second deployment. 2 combat deployments out of the 74th Fighter Squadron while I was on active duty at Moody Air Force Base. And then in 2013, transitioned from Moody Air Force Base to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, where I was an instructor pilot in our formal training unit. So I did that until 2016 when I transitioned off of active duty and then joined the Air National Guard.
I was born in Dallas. We lived right outside of Love Field, and my mom used to take me to the park and just watch airplanes all day. So I knew from 2 years old, that was it. That was what I was gonna do. We moved to northern New Jersey, about a mile from Morristown Airport, and that's where I learned to fly. I did the standard aviation thing where I just kept running out of money. So I started flying when I was 13 and ran out of money, and then kept flying and ran out of money and worked some and ran out of money. Finally got my act together when I was 22 and finished my private. And then when I was at college at the University of Miami, I used to scratch the itch by splitting a Cessna and flying a Bimini or flying to Fort Lauderdale, just going across the state with my friends. Was in Air Force ROTC in college, and joined the Air Force out of that and was commissioned out of that. I did a really cool exchange with the Navy. So I flew Navy T-6s at Whiting Field in Pensacola. And all throughout that time, I was flying Diamonds or Cessnas or whatever to just keep scratching the itch. I flew King Air 350 ERs. I was stationed in Northern California at Beale Air Force Base with the U-2 squadron. There are a lot of general aviation guys in that squadron. Reno's right there. So flown a ton of their G airplanes, J3s, 172s, RVs. I was an assistant to the regional crew chief of a race plane in the biplane racing class, Race 66, second hand, which is a great airplane and awesome guys. They're talking me through building me my RV-8 right now. I'm being as annoying as one would be, trying to figure out how to do that. And then I got to the A-10 in my last assignment before coming here. So I've always been surrounded by GA, flying around the Bay Area, flying up and down the Hudson. My wife has flown a lot of places with me, just showing her around and trying to get her and my daughters involved in it. So I'm trying to stay as involved as I humanly can be.
So to fly the A-10, so I fly general aviation still, and a lot of my friends, we talk about just how it's very similar to like a general aviation aircraft. Similar to like a decathlon or like a Super Cub almost, if you will. Kind of heavy on the controls, but still very agile down low at a higher speed. So the A-10 has a big, thick, straight wing, which is kind of non-traditional for most jets, but big turbofan engines that handles really, really well down low. It can turn on a dime to do all the primary mission sets that air support close to the ground. So it flies just like a big Super Cub.
I think the most rewarding aspect is we'll be at maybe an air show or a flyover type of event, and somebody comes up to you and they say, hey, you saved my son's life, or you saved my life. It wasn't necessarily us that did it, but it was somebody in an A-10 that did that. That's extremely rewarding to have that feedback and to know that this mission, that the attack pilot culture was able to save someone's life.
I use flying as I think a lot of people do. I use flying to decompress. When you're singularly focused on doing one thing, just flying, it's meditational, it feels great. I've done a lot of really cool stuff in a lot of really cool airplanes. Deployed all over the world doing it. The most fun I've ever had, period dot, is a 46 J3 in the pattern, listening to music. That's it. I've never had more fun. It's purely a meditational thing for me. I can't build one of these. I can pretend like I know what's happening, but I like being able to pop the cowling and diagnose something. I like working with my hands. I like cleaning the bugs off the leading edge. I like doing that stuff, especially when it's to support such amazing airplanes like a J3 or a 172. It's very peaceful to me.
So when I started my military career, I had, with all the commercial and instrument experience, that definitely gave me the stick and rudder and kind of that baseline foundational instrument knowledge to go into the military flying. So that part it was awesome to have that background to go into military training. Military training is very emergency procedure focused and specific. A lot of the foundational knowledge and training stems from emergency procedures, and then obviously all the systems and everything else kind of from there. Whereas general aviation, it's obviously like a very big part of it, but we're also more focused on kind of just the general, like the aviate, the navigate, the communicate, which is also inherent in the military flying as well, but you know, that military makes a big emphasis on that. So the general aviation part definitely complemented to having all that foundational training to go into the military background, because a military pilot traditionally will go from, you know, anywhere from 0 to 15 hours of experience to the equivalent of a instrument rated, formation capable commercial pilot in 14 months. So it is a fire hose of training for a typical active duty pilot for the initial part of their careers. Like, you're in the grind for 14 months hammering away, learning very fast how to make it happen. So right now the 20-something A-10s from the Maryland Guard are slated for divestment at the end of September 2025. So all of our A-10s will be either off to the boneyard or backfilling other A-10 units before they are divested in the coming years. So right now it's kind of a difficult time for everybody watching our jets fly away as we kind of wrap up 104 years of legacy here at the Maryland Guard.
The thing that I will miss most about flying the A-10 is talking to guys and girls on the ground overseas. That's all we want to do. Deploying is terrible for the family. It's a huge ask on the home front, but the second you get there and you can allow somebody to sleep with their door open and feel more comfortable while simultaneously scaring anybody from making any moves that would harm your folks, it's the best thing ever. It really is. Just making Americans feel more comfortable is the best thing that we could do.